Hello, another video already. People seem to really respond to the video that I did breaking down the state of wrestling speeches. Um, and I was afraid what was going to get buried with all of that, with the podcast going so well and being so popular, and then my video is Logan Chase, who's a manager in the Georgia area, wrote a thing, and I thought it warranted discussion. And since I'm kind of back in the swing of things and talking about stuff, I thought I would go over it. Is it going to be the most riveting video I've ever done? Probably not, but I think Logan Chase deserves more people to read it and to have an active discussion about it. So it's called, by the way, you can find it at gwhnewsandnotes.blogspot.com. I'll put the exact link in the description of this video. It says it's titled Wrestling's Devaluation of Managers. And I'm just going to break it down. Do I agree with this whole thing? No, not at all. However, do I think it's really great? I got to say, overall, I think it's really great. And a lot of people may disagree with me on that. I know Jeff G. Bailey in particular, who is not overly thrilled with the managers that have sort of remained as he has gone. But I do think Logan Chase does a great job. Certainly, I think a much better job than C. Nick did in his speech. But at least one thing good came out of C. Nick's speech, and that was it inspired Logan Chase to write this. So he says, from Logan Chase, managing is not a lost art. It's on life support. I totally believe this to be true. I think that's a great jumping off point. Again, as more and more people, Drew Blood and other people are writing things, as more people are doing wrestling reports of shows that they're going to, because Larry can't be everywhere at once. Rod can't be everywhere at once. I think an important thing to remember about writing, and I don't care how it's being taught in schools now and how things have changed, at the end of the day, a strong first line is a great way to go, and Logan certainly does that. It's not a lost art, it's on life support. So this is going to be a somewhat optimistic take. It's, I think, more in defense of managers than anything else. And he totally believes this to be true. I don't think he needs to say that right off the bat, but I get it. Logan hasn't really written anything like this on a public forum about wrestling, so he just wants to kind of reassure us that we should trust him. Many people have debated that importance or non-importance of managers. Yeah, I guess that's kind of true. Tonight's tipping point perpetuated this discussion, which needs to be had. The problem isn't the managers, it's the constant perpetuation that they aren't important. This is where I'm already going to take exception. I get that he's taking a strong viewpoint, which is it's not about the fact that the managers themselves aren't that great. It's the fact that their role is seen as not important, and that creates the problem. We'll get into it now. And he goes into things right away. Their place in wrestling has been downsized. Think about this. How does a manager break into the business? Most wrestling schools will not train managers. I don't think that's true. I don't think really it would support his point, even if it was true. But wrestling schools, if your check clears, they're fucking training you. I don't care for what. I can, speaking for myself, did I ever train commentators? Yes. Did I train referees? Yes. Did I train managers? Yes. Did I train wrestlers? Yes. Yeah. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think the truth is most managers don't go for training because if they really wanted to train, they would be wrestlers. That's not all of them, but I think the vast majority of managers think I can go out there and do that, and they do. And I think even the best managers would sort of cop to the fact that they weren't really trained, unless they were wrestlers first. Yeah. Anyway, I'm belaboring that point because I do think wrestling schools will train managers. I don't think that's really an issue. Therefore, what we are left with are the girlfriends, wives, buddies who tag along. I do think being a girlfriend, a wife, a buddy, or whatever enables you to get a spot as a manager. I think that is true. And I don't think it's because there's this legion of people who want to be managers, but they just couldn't get properly trained and they don't have a way in. No, I think the opposite is true. I think being a manager is a thing that, put it this way, the higher the level of the show in Georgia, the less managers they are, but the more significance those managers have. Where I'm sure there's like dirt shows and terrible shows, and most likely the shows that always complain that they don't get enough attention from Georgia wrestling history and stuff probably have like 4 or 5 managers on that show because they suck, right? And so that's the one where the guy who used to be in the first row is then the manager. Now that sounds like a slight, and maybe it is to a point, but sometimes it works out. Right? Is somebody going to tell me Matt Hankins isn't a great fucking manager? He is. Yeah. And he was literally a guy who sat in the first row of PCW shows and continued to get his way into the business. But he's definitely the exception, not the rule. Yeah. I've always taken exception to this because I am a trained wrestler who chose to be a manager. I hold steady in my belief that managers should be trained wrestlers and specialize in managing. I disagree with that to a point. However, I think the fact that he has been trained as a wrestler and chose to specialize in managing gives him kind of a leg up on just about everybody else. Like the fact that I know that actually kind of changes my viewpoint of Logan just a little bit. Honestly, I don't think everybody needs to be trained as a wrestler in order to be a manager. Do coaches have to be ex-players? No. In fact, great players rarely make great coaches. Great players rarely make great publicists. Great players rarely make great mentors. And I think manager is all of those things. They're hype men. They're supposed to guide your career. Let's be honest. Only one manager can really say in Georgia that they are truly guides for the people they are in charge of, and that's Jeff G. Bailey. To a lesser extent, I think Doc Brock probably does that, but not like Jeff does. Jeff is the manager that carries the most weight in a locker room, or did. Yeah, I think Dan carried a lot of weight in the locker room. So, but you know what? I don't doubt that Logan Chase does. I think the more I hear about Logan Chase, the better it is. My inclination is, because I'm friends with Jeff G. Bailey, is to dismiss Logan Chase out of hand. But I got to say, reading this, I was impressed, and things that I've heard about Logan Chase, I'm impressed. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. I chalk this under utilization of training to the fact that you can't really teach managing. It truly is something that people either have or have not. I think that, again, it's a strong statement, and I think it's mostly true. There are guys who are just better at it. But even the managers who we now consider to be great were probably pretty shitty at one point. But they had something that made them keep doing it, you know? Sure, any school can teach you how to do the moves and take the bumps. However, can you really teach the art of managing? I think you can, but I think it takes somebody who's really, really smart and somebody who... There's a book called the Medici Effect, and it's about how companies used to hire the best person for a job. And then they figured out that you're usually better off getting somebody who's out of that field to take the job because they have totally different viewpoints. I think the best managers are people who have other things going on in their life that they bring to the managing. I think it's why Paul E. worked as a manager. He would bring in sort of like modern pop culture things. I think, you know, he's a great manager, was a great booker, and certainly is sort of an iconic figure in wrestling. There's a reason for that. I think Jim Cornette has other interests outside of wrestling, and that's what makes him just a little bit better than most everybody else when it comes to continuing to be a part of wrestling. I think the best managers, even now, their interests lie elsewhere also, and then they bring that into wrestling. There is no, I don't want to meet a purist wrestling person, especially as a manager. God, it's horrifying to even think about, you know. Managing encompasses so much: how to get heat appropriately, how to transfer heat, how to do a proper promo, how to stay out of the way yet make your presence felt to better your protege. Nothing to debate there. He's right on the money. That's what managing is: getting heat appropriately, transferring heat, do a proper promo, how to stay out of the way yet make your presence felt to better your protege. He has that self-effacing thing. I think at the heart of a manager, there's always an ego involved. We're all performers. But at the heart of the manager is the desire to perpetuate and better their proteges. It's why back in the day, a manager turning on their charges was a way to get instant heat and turn heels into baby faces instantly. If your manager turned on you, that was a betrayal of trust. Yeah. Nowadays, would it be the same for a lot of managers in the Georgia area? We all know the answer to that question. Nobody would care. You know, the ones, put it this way: when managers turn on their wrestlers, if that could be turned into an angle, that means the manager's done a great job. If it can't really be turned into an angle, that means the manager didn't matter enough, and that relationship wasn't deemed real enough or significant enough, and it wouldn't matter. Yeah. Not everyone can or should be a manager. Great statement, blunt and to the point, and he's absolutely right. Part of the art of managing is being able to do to the manager what you don't want to do to the wrestler. In the heyday, managers getting their comeuppance was the draw of the town that only happened once, maybe twice in a year. Absolutely true. Now we have people put in manager positions in companies that are untrained. Therefore, you will not be able to see a proper payoff because they can't get in the ring and pull it off. Again, I'm going to disagree with that a little bit. I think wrestling has had a history of, in fact, managers that didn't look like they belonged in the ring and weren't comfortable in a ring have done as great or bigger payoffs than guys who were originally wrestlers. You can pay it off. I think the danger becomes when managers it's actually, there's been more cases of managers who were wrestlers first or trained as wrestlers who, when they were supposed to do a spot as a manager, felt the need to show off and see, I wanted to show the boys I could work. I think J.J. Dillon described that in his book, and the promoter got so mad because he went out there and wrestled a match to show the boys, see, I used to wrestle, I can do this stuff. And he's like, you're a manager. You're not supposed to go out there and swap headlocks and arm locks with the guys. And I think he's right there. So, yeah. Have you ever set back? He says set instead of sit. I'm not going to hold it against him. Set back and thought about the plight of the manager in wrestling in terms of being booked on shows. Most managers are package deals, which means they come with the wrestler hoping the promoter will let them go out. That's absolutely true. And that's mostly negative. At the same time, it stands to reason, right? Jeff was intertwined with Gunnar Miller. People knew if you're booking Jeff, you're booking Gunnar Miller, vice versa. And I think there's something that's really cool about that. In fact, all the great managers in history, if I say their name, you can tell me what charges they were tied to. Now, indie wrestling's a different thing. If you're working for multiple promotions, maybe they'll just quote unquote stick you with somebody to help get them over. That's good too. I think there's a lot to learn in that. Most managers, I would imagine, went through a thing where they just assigned you a guy and your job was to get them over. In fact, I think it's the lack of that that hurts, you know. Now, this is not true with everyone, he says in parentheses, but a fair assessment in general. Yeah, I agree with him. A wrestler can get booked anywhere they want. They are the commodity. However, have you tried to get booked as a manager? I have. Oftentimes I'm told, sorry, our budget cannot handle a manager. Even better, I was booked on a show only to be told, nope, Can't use you because we already have a heel, which was the promoter. The devaluation of the art form of managing is the issue with managers. Yes. There's no doubt that managers are not as valuable. I think I totally agree with him there. I think trying to say that it's not the manager's fault themselves, it's a strong position, but I don't think it's a completely accurate one. I think even Logan Chase would cop to that. He's just trying to highlight the fact that that managers are already devalued. That already if everybody sees through that lens that managers don't matter, then no matter what managers do, it's not on the managers to increase their value because that value's already been diminished before they even get into the game, which I get. Take a look around the promotions in Georgia. Most of us are specific to a promotion. Absolutely true. As a dark horse of 14.5 years. Wow. I've seen my share of promotions, wrestlers, and managers come and go through the state of Georgia. Sure. I applaud you if you've read this far, because I would have figured most people would be like, who the hell are you? A little humility is nice in writing. To you, I say, hello, my name is Logan Chase, and I'm one of the managers in Georgia who has kept his mouth shut for years, oftentimes overlooked in the conversations around managers. I think that's true. I actually like that Logan Chase is a little mad about being undervalued. I like it. Being undervalued for years has taught me to stay below the radar and do my own thing, working slowly to maintain credibility to the art of managing. However, I can't set back anymore. I have to make my voice heard, parentheses, even if it's just me reading. It's not going to be just you reading. If nothing else, I've read it, and now I'm going to put out this video, and so more people are going to read it. And it's good. If what you're trying to do is to start an active discussion about managers and how they can be included in shows more and how they can help generate heat and help get some guys over so we don't turn into a bunch of promotions that just have flippy-floppy work rate matches. I could not be less interested in just work rate matches. I think managers definitely have a place. I'm going to talk more about that in a bit. Last paragraph, the devaluation of managers can be seen heavily on the independent scene. I mean, we have people stepping in that do not know a wrist lock from a wrist watch, trying to take on the roles of manager because it, quote, gets them close to the action. For God's sakes, we have promoters who have no training in manager roles just to suffice their own egos. Ooh. Who's he talking about? I know who he's talking about. This is the true degradation of the art of managing and why real managers can't be taken seriously. It's funny because Logan Chase and Jeff G. Bailey, I'm sorry I bring up Jeff a lot, but we're friends, and he's the standard of managers in the area of the modern era. When women started coming in the 90s, and all of a sudden it was more interesting to have a woman at ringside than an old fat guy, I could see that. It started to chip away, right? Once it was expected that guys became the total package, not Lex Luger, but could talk. You had to be able to do everything. You needed a manager even less. Once the idea of building to a money match, I think that's something else that's actually hurt managers. Plus, let's be real. There was a time where managers in sports and entertainment were more prominent. Yeah. What's the name of Elvis's manager? You know. What's the name of Ali's entourage? You knew. Who trained Mike Tyson? You know. Who is the manager of Floyd Mayweather? Who's Conor McGregor's manager? No idea. Guys are expected to be branded in and of themselves. And in fact, sharing that brand with a manager would be seen as a weakness, not a strength. That's a big part of the problem. Loved Logan Chase's article. I think it'll cause a bunch of great discussion. But now I'm going to just talk a little bit about managers and how I see it. I was a big fan of managers in PCW. Big fan. Because PCW, the concept was we were a gym show that just happened to be the best show because of my booking and because of the sort of hunger of the men and women who were involved in it. But I had managers all over the place. And my theory was, if these guys are a big deal, and I'm saying they are, right? The wrestlers, they're big deals, then there would be people who would be glomming onto them and using them to perpetuate their own fame who couldn't wrestle themselves. That was a subtle thing, but I think it worked effectively. When I formed the Empire to take out PCW, I took the 3 heel managers and put them together. And then I brought in Jeff G. Bailey. And then they were this stable of managers who had an even bigger stable of wrestlers. I thought it was kind of a cool concept. But all of that thinking was because I had the end game in mind like a year later, which was at some point all the managers are going to get theirs at the hands of the babyface that finally wipes out the Empire. And I think PCW, not to mention at one point at PCW, we had more attractive women in the locker room and in the shows than Georgia has ever will have. But more than that, we had more women that could talk and work, and we featured women more prominently than anybody else does. Everybody else, even the ones that treat women's wrestling the best, still treat it as a novelty. Even the ones that have managers that have prominence still treat managers as a bit of a novelty. If you really want things to change, bookers have to realize that managers have to be treated like what they need to be treated like, which is not an addition to somebody else, but as entities all to themselves. That's my addition to what Logan Chase wrote. As long as managers, because of course heel promoters are going to take the role of a manager because it's like, oh, I can make myself the biggest deal of all. I can book myself as this all-powerful thing that in theory gets taken down, right? The Vince McMahon heel figure. But at the end of the day, for managers to return to prominence, they have to be booked appropriately, which again coincides with what Logan Chase has said. I'm just saying more about it. Bookers have to get better. Point blank, period. When bookers get better, bookers have the power to make anything more important. Managers, performers. You can take guys that quote unquote don't belong on a wrestling card and make them stars, or at least put them in a position where they can make themselves into stars. And I think managers have a vital role. If I say UFC, what name pops into your mind, right? For most of the country, it's Dana White. Yeah. Are there guys who could manage the boys, manage the fighters, who could be huge stars as well? Absolutely. But part of that is you got to make your own luck. Yeah, I got to say I was really disappointed because Seeing Nick had a chance to really show us what he was about. David Ali had a chance to show us who he was about. And I'll tell you, it doesn't help the case of the manager. And I'm sure Logan Chase was listening and just like, because any manager worth his salt thinks they can go out there and rock it every time on a microphone. That's your job. I remember Matt Hankins when he was brand new as a manager and went out there and did really great his first time. And somebody questioned him and said, like, how'd you do? Did you rock it? And he's like, of course I rocked it. And this was in a response to a manager that I had brought in from the outside, kind of gave him a shot at PCW, and he completely shit the bed. And the response from Matt Hankins, who was brand spanking new himself, and this veteran manager was, what? You went out there and failed. I think managers have a smaller margin of error. And they have to be more prepared. They have to be masters at their craft because their craft is incredibly limited compared to wrestlers who are expected to do it all. So why have a manager if I talk just as well as he does? Yeah. In the modern game, it doesn't really work. In the old game, Nick Bockwinkel could cut a promo. Ray Stevens could cut a promo. What did they need Bobby Heenan for? Well, he just added to their greatness. Yeah. Managers nowadays, they can't just add to their greatness. They have to be great themselves. And until that happens, like wrestling's not going to budge and meet the managers halfway or more than halfway. I think individual managers have to be 95% of the work. They have to be great in and of themselves. There's just no choice when you're a rarer commodity, because he was saying, yeah, look at independent wrestling in his writing. This is another thing I disagree with. Yeah, but where are the managers in the WWE? There's only one or two, but the one or two that they have are phenomenal, right? Paulie, well, maybe not lately as much, but there's a time where he killed it and he was amazing and had people saying he was the greatest manager of all time. It's really, he was kind of the only manager of all time. Anyway, man, this has gone on a while, but I thought Logan Chase's article was great. I thought it warranted attention, and so I have given it to him. Have a great day, and see you in a week and a half or so on the tipping point. Until then, if something comes up in wrestling, especially Georgia wrestling, I'm going to comment on it. Have a good day.